Welcome to the Tuesday Review. My name is Nathan, as always, joined by Callum and James in the studio. How you going, guys?
Snoochie boochies.
Snoogans.
Very good. Also joined by Rafal. How you going, Rafal?
Our
He's nodding that he's good.
our live studio audience.
Yeah. Tonight we're talking about Kevin Smith's latest movie, Clerks III, and just the
Yeah.
View Askewniverse in general, I
Yeah.
suppose, as it relates. So it's just come out.
Noinch, smoking
Yes.
weed, smoke. Okay, so
Almost had to hit the dump button. No, that's okay. Don't do drugs.
Yeah. So first off, I want to say when we did our 100th episode and we talked about all our like favorite movies and favorite filmmakers and stuff, I'm surprised Kevin Smith didn't come up at all. And I think it was just because we were rushing and we had so much to talk about. But I feel like Kevin Smith is like we're all big fans of his. I think Callum and Nathan are the biggest fans of Kevin Smith I know personally. And Kevin Smith movies are movies we all bonded over in high school when we first became friends.
Yeah, Strikes Back.
Yeah.
I told you, oh yeah, you should rent Strikes Back. That's a pretty cool movie. I think you rented it. You told me about it.
I can't remember, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw it in primary school.
Strikes Back came out.
Oh,
It came out in 2001, 2002. So we were in primary school. I didn't know you guys yet.
Oh, your parents have questionable.
My parents
Also,
my parents are cool. Like, if it's not too hardcore, like I was pretty much allowed to watch it. Also, I'm pretty sure I saw it at a friend's place where
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it wasn't their decision. But
2001.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, that's old, yeah.
so anyway, like when we became friends in high school, we bonded over Kevin Smith, and then Clerks 2 came out in 2006. So we were like 15, 16 years old. And
Just
that
the
was
right age for that movie.
Yeah, right age for that
Yeah.
movie. And I remember, like, we would used to quote it at each other all the time, yell at each other, like, during recess across the yard and stuff like that. So, like, Kevin Smith is a big, important part of our friendship, and we're big fans of his films and his View Askewniverse. I'm also surprised when we talked about like our favorite movies that Callum didn't mention Mallrats because
Yeah, it's my favorite of his movies.
yeah, anytime Callum gets to talk about Mallrats, he's like gets so excited. But yeah, all that is to say, like when Clerks 2 came out, it was a big deal, and it was the perfect time for us. And then flash forward 15 years, 16 years later, and finally Clerks 3
which had a troubled
yeah, I mean it feels like
conception, let alone
because like when the first movie came out, it's like, well, is there going to be a Clerks 2? And it's like, no, that's not really a thing. And then it finally came out, and then ever since Clerks 2, it's like, is 3 going to come out? Is 3 going to come out?
He's always been like, yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. And then like 10 years ago, it's like, yeah, we're going to make it. And then no, it didn't happen. And the script, he's just like, he had a script, but it was like really dark. And Jeff Anderson.
you had a falling out, yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff Anderson, who plays Randall, like, isn't really an actor except for like these Kevin Smith movies, and so he didn't really want to do it. He didn't want to do the second movie, and he did, and he enjoyed that, but like he didn't want to do the third movie.
I feel like also Kev's whole career kind of took a hit with the Weinstein Company issues.
Yes, that too.
And then he had to find his own funding to make movies, and everything just got a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that some of these movies had, we'll say a longer than normal process.
Yeah. And his career went in like kind of different directions as well. Like he started changing the movies he made. Like Clerks 2 was the last View Askew movie until Jay and Silent Bob Reboot came out in 2019.
Yeah.
So,
which is crazy. He did comics, he did TV, he did...
Yeah, and on one hand, I think that's a good thing because like if he just made View Askew movies for the rest of his career, would have been fine. But like I think it's good that whether you like his other movies or not, it's good that he got to do other stuff.
He did the reality shows.
Yeah,
Comic Book Man,
yeah, and he does
and touring.
He does every podcast ever under the sun. And he's been doing that probably before podcasts were even a thing.
Yeah, he's like the grandfather of like the son of like the comedy podcast.
Yeah, it
almost.
was like before Ricky Gervais even, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Smodcast pioneered the
Like,
whole.
I remember
basically in the industry.
Back in the day, I think when I was still in high school, I bought a Smodcast book,
Yeah.
Wow.
which transcripts.
Yeah, we got that.
Do
Yeah.
you still have it?
I don't think so. If
Huh.
it might be buried somewhere
Yeah,
in
I'd
the
be
house. I don't
interested
know.
to see that.
But I was in high school and I had a book of
Yeah.
transcribed podcast episodes.
Yeah, it was like so far before
That's it.
podcasts were a thing that like, oh, we have to write this down so people can...
Yeah, it's like a book,
Yeah.
just like Kevin, and then like guest, Kevin,
Yeah.
guest, and
Wow.
I read it. I was like, why did I just
That's
listen to it?
interesting, yeah.
I don't know. I guess phones weren't quite
Back in
advanced
the
enough.
I guess
to,
back
like,
in the day, yeah,
it's
it's
a
like
little harder to listen on the go, I suppose. So I had
Yeah.
a book with me.
or you have to listen on your
Yeah.
iPod because they were podcasts. You couldn't listen on your
Yeah. But yeah, so he's done everything.
Yeah, he
basically.
did so many things, and like, I mean, we followed his career, and you know he had his ups and downs, and then did he have his heart attack before reboot?
No. Yeah. Way
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple of years
Yeah.
ago now.
Then he had his massive heart
I
attack.
think it was like 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He had a massive heart attack, and he almost died. And he started to rethink, like what he wanted to do with his career. And he's just
In
like,
2018.
yeah, so like a year before reboot. Yeah, and then he made Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which is like the first View Askew connected movie
Yeah,
in
since
years
Clerks II.
since Clerks 2. And that was okay. We didn't really get a chance to talk about much. I think we mentioned it here or there on the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think as a comedy, the humor wasn't the best, but I think the sincere emotional moments I think were really well done.
I think he's certainly honed that since he's got older.
Yeah, and I think that's really what that movie was about. It was about him coming to terms with being a dad, and him coming to terms with his ownership of the View Askew universe, and the Jane's like quote unquote saying goodbye to the Jay and Silent Bob characters, whatever. And it was okay. I mean, obviously they didn't have a big budget and they couldn't do a lot of the things they probably wanted to do. And then flash forward to this year, Clerks 3 comes out.
Yeah.
And again, like, this is something that's been in the pipeline for a long time. It's been something people have been asking for since the second movie. And yeah, I mean, it's just
It's
exciting. It's an exciting time. It's like, yes, Clerks 3. Like, it feels like being in high school again on one hand, but on the other hand, we're older and the world has changed and the world has gotten more awful, or seemingly anyway.
Oh no, not seemingly.
we see it. Check the news. Oh no, I don't know about that.
And yeah, and like, yeah, it's just. It's special, but also like watching it, I was just like this is kind of sad, and like I don't think he should do View Askew movies anymore.
Yeah,
and I think this feels like an ending to View Askew completely.
It's funny. I was saying to Nathan, I knew Nathan told me the third act was sad. And
he was probing me because I watched it a week before Callum.
Yeah,
he was probing me the whole time.
Man, I wasn't prepared for the amount of feelings I'd feel consistently throughout.
Yeah,
not just in the third act, but there's moments where it was like heart wrenching to me. I was like, Jesus.
I don't like, because it's been quite a while since I watched Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, but I think this movie was funnier or had like a bit more consistently.
The humor was more on point in this when it was supposed to be funny.
A bit more consistent.
I think
jokes hit more consistently, maybe, but I can't remember.
So
I have to
it's funny
rewatch.
Talking about Clerks is Kevin's expertise. You know what I mean?
Talking about anything is Kevin Smith. Like, he can just start and never stop.
But I think that the benefit he had with this film is that the chemistry between Dante and Randall has always been amazing, and he knows how to use it. Whereas with Jay and Silent Bob's humor, it's just, let's be honest, it's funny, but it's also it's toilet humor, it's cartoony. Whereas the type of humor that he uses in Clerks, it's a bit sharper. I think it's a bit more nerdy.
Jay and Silent Bob also, they work best as side characters in another feature.
Yeah.
And as great as Strikes Back is, it's that kind of cartoony action adventure movie, and Reboot couldn't really live up to that. And now they're much older.
I feel like in my mind, the perfect Jay and Silent Bob movie is Dogma.
Yeah.
Because that's when they, in my mind, that's when
enough.
they work best as side characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they rock up to save what's her name,
like,
and
I feel like that's where they have the best vibe in a movie. For me, is Dogma.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a personal opinion. I feel like that's where they're in their element as being like side characters that are propelling the story forward, but they're not the focus.
Yeah.
But they're also strengthened by the cast around them too. Like in Dogma, you got Chris Rock and you got you got Alan Rickman.
It's a part of an ensemble. They work best as part of an ensemble.
Yeah. But in this film, it's a lot more focused. So like the jokes have to be in this case. There's lots of one-liners, lots of really witty retorts, quippy retorts. What I'm gonna say.
Quippy at the quick stop.
That's it. So it's like I think that's why this humor is a bit stronger, is because it wasn't as unfocused as Strikes Back. Oh, it's not Strikes Back. Reboots.
Yeah.
Because like Reboot was very all over the place. You know, it's here a bunch of his friends and they just did random stuff or whatever.
And they were trying to replicate the road movie of Strikes Back, so they had to like go to different places and
So I think but that's what I love about this film, is it's such a small scope. So like it allows the characters to fully discover themselves without the stimulus of the if you know what I mean, of the larger world.
Before I watched Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, I'm like, I'm gonna rewatch all of the View Askew movies leading up to it. So this was like the end of 2020, like December 2020. I was like, I want to watch Reboot. I got it on Blu-ray, finally came out. And I'm like, I'm going to rewatch all the other View Askew movies. And after I did, and then I watched Reboot, and then I was like, I think the first Clerks is still Kevin Smith's best movie. As much as he would probably hate to hear that. Like, I think...
As much as he knows deep down.
It's a great movie. Like,
it's hilarious.
With all the limited resources he had... and the limited budget and the kind of DIY nature to it.
What is it? Necessity is
the mother of all invention. Yeah, exactly. Like
we've talked about the some of the best art comes from somebody who needs to make it or they have to give it up. It's like Springsteen's talked about it before. There's that album he did where it was like, I have to make this work. So it's like you tape recorder in the hotel room.
Nebraska.
Yeah, and then, they just make magic happen. That's what Clerks did.
That's the perfect way to put it, because it's like, that's why I feel Clerks
has such an energy to it.
Yeah, it feels so raw. One, because it is raw, because they had to just work with the limited resources, but also because there's like this guy who was working a dead-end job and was like, I'm going to make a movie. I have to get it out of me, and even if this is the last thing I ever do...
He's got to try.
He's going to try. And it paid off. And I think now, almost 30 years later, I feel like, obviously the energy is completely different because he's an older guy. He's had a kid and his career's gone a different way. It's like it loses that energy. Same Reboot had the same problem, and obviously budget is a problem. Even though the first Clerks, they had no money, but it's like it just. It doesn't have the same
vitality.
Yeah, and I'm like, I feel like I wasn't a big fan of Reboot. I liked parts of it, and I feel like Clerks 3 is the same thing. It's like I like parts of it, but overall, I think like it wasn't very good.
Yeah,
and like I think he should just move on now with his career. I want to see him do other stuff.
So I watched it this afternoon, so it's still very fresh to me.
Okay.
And so I was saying to the boys after I watched it, I don't know. It felt like a really personal movie to me, and I know that sounds dumb.
No.
But as a man in his 30s working retail, who watching Kevin Smith's movie, it very much said, "Hey, Callum, you too are wasting your life." It put me in a really melancholy place. So I'm like, "Thanks for that, Kev." I'm like, I didn't
just what I needed to start my week.
I mean, we'll get to the problems in depth a bit later, but I feel like I did not like the screenplay. I think that the first half is great. But then the second half, I think I would not have filmed that.
Like making a meta commentary on, like, it's the first Clerks is very autobiographical. It's about Kevin Smith worked at the Quick Stop convenience store in New Jersey, and he made a movie about a guy who works at a Quick Stop convenience store in New Jersey, and he filmed it at his workplace at night when there were no customers. And would make up scenarios based on the funny things
Yeah.
he saw and whatever. And similarly, like this movie is very autobiographical. It's about one of those characters has a heart attack just like
Kevin Smith did the
Kevin
same
Smith
one.
did.
Yeah.
And he decides to make a movie just like Kevin Smith did when he was younger. And
It's Kev trying to, it's a movie like Kev has a heart attack and tries to basically reinvigorates his career.
Yeah.
It spurs him on into action, right?
So, like-
this is his bonus period.
yeah, and that's great.
And
It's
the
just
same
like-
thing happens to Randall, essentially. It spurs him on
Yeah.
into action.
And so, like, that's great. He's like, it's coming from a very personal place. But I feel like the way the story went and the way it's written in terms of the scenes, it's just like, it's not that great. As a movie itself, it's not great. Obviously, again, there's like budget limitations and stuff. But I feel like it's more a companion to Jane Silent Bob Reboot, where it's about an older guy who's at a certain point in his career, at a certain point in his life, he's come back from a like near-death experience basically, and he's making a movie about it's a meta commentary on him and his career and his life and these characters, and it's less a movie and it's more like just
The amount of self-referential jokes, the amount of referential things, like the amount of in-jokes, I feel like there's too much.
Yeah.
It bogs the movie down where that could have been focused more on the characters themselves, their relationships, and just the art of making a film too.
Exactly. I feel like Kevin Smith has gotten into and I think he even admitted this on an interview one time. I can't remember where, but I think he said something like this, where it's just like he's basically trapped in a circle of like jerking himself off of like it's like just self-referential, and like, you know, all the cast members from the original Clerks come back and they just repeat their lines because Randall, the character's making a movie based on the convenience store, and it's basically he's remaking the first movie, which in the original movie it wasn't a movie. Yeah, it's like he's remaking part. So it's and it becomes very bogged down in that. Yeah, and that becomes the whole movie, and it's not a movie in itself. Like there are no like customer interaction scenes other than
the ones where
they're filming, which are recreations of the customer
original
scenes in the original. And so, it's not really its own movie. It's just Kevin Smith working some stuff out on screen. And it doesn't
That's
really...
the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I feel like you just put it in the best way that like my feelings towards the movie, I couldn't verbalize it. And that's the perfect way to describe it.
And as big Kevin Smith fans, like, it's fun to see all the references and the Easter eggs and the actors, returning actors. It's like, oh, they're so much older. And, you know, and he said this, and this is a reference to this, and look at that poster, it's of this. And it's like you get it, but it's also
even
what?
Even the highly dramatic scenes. There's the scene where Randall's in the hospital and they're wheeling him away. Yeah. And, you know, he basically just repeats a Kevin Smith anecdote. Yeah. Where he's like, oh no, you can't take my underwear off because I have a small penis.
Yeah,
and he's like, anyway, so that even, as somebody who does follow Kevin Smith, I'm like,
it's word for word.
I already knew this. I already knew this idea. So he's just, it's funny. I still laughed.
At least that part is like technically original to the movie.
Yeah, but it's like I still know that it's recycled. Yeah, exactly. So for Kevin Smith fans, you can see recycled. Like there's nothing. I mean, it was never going to be an original film in the sense that we're talking about.
Yeah. Again, I think it's what James
bogs
said.
Everything down.
He's working stuff out on screen. And he's getting it out of his system.
That's why I think, especially the way the movie ends, I think, like, I don't want him to do View Askew movies or related characters anymore. Like, I feel like, especially...
If all the characters are going to be just as tragic, please leave Brody alone.
Yeah, I know.
And that's why, because they've been talking about the Morat sequel for years, and I don't think he should do anything like that.
So, I mean, I guess we'll start talking about...
spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
View Askewniverse in general, obviously.
So I was kind of disappointed to see that, like, it's interesting because Kevin had this really dark idea for a screenplay originally. this was a pretty dark script that he filmed in some sense.
Yeah.
It's a very sad
I wanna
script.
know-
It's very melancholy.
I'd like to read the original script.
I want to know what that original script was, because like how
dark can you get?
Unless it was Randall who died in the original script, and that's why Jeff Anderson didn't want to do it. But I don't feel like Jeff Anderson would be that precious.
No.
And so Kevin Smith swapped it.
I think that my understanding is that the screenplay probably just would have been more about something like depression, or maybe one of them probably
Maybe suicide.
takes their own lives, and then
Yeah.
it's like, how do you move on from that? And I can understand why that they might have been hesitant to do that, the actors, because it's like, well, especially for Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson, where they're most best known for these
Yeah.
characters, they might not want to take them in that direction.
Yeah.
But this film, like I said, it was a very emotional movie, and I wasn't like, I was like,
I think-
come on, man.
Like
Brian, Dante, for example,
Yeah.
it's like he lost his wife and girlfriend and baby.
Like a spoiler alert again, just in
Yeah.
case. But Brian O'Halloran's performances during those like emotional breakdown scenes is the best work he's ever done.
Yeah, hands down.
And like, I'm not even opposed to that. Like like with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, the emotional scenes packed more punch for me.
Yeah.
Than the humor scenes or whatever. It's like that when Kevin Smith gets kind of sappy and sentimental,
That's where he's at his best.
he's kind
sometimes.
of at this age and this point in his career, he's kind of strongest at that.
Yeah.
It's everything else that he's kind of falling apart at. As a filmmaker, I think he has gotten worse.
He has. No, I I love you, Kev, if you're listening.
Yeah.
But he has gotten worse over time, because, like, I don't know if it's the marijuana or whatever. No, like, I'm being actually quite serious, because he used to be a lot sharper as a writer.
Yeah.
And then it's
he's
pun
still-
intended. He's become a lot more blunt.
You can still see he's sharp. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of great stuff in the script, but he went in. I don't like the directions he went in it, and the filmmaking and the editing and everything isn't
Like,
as good as
Going in, we always
used to
knew
be.
the movie was about Jeff having a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
Or Randall, I should say, right? But I don't know, like, what possessed him to make, we'll say, Dante's story as equally sad.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
Like,
saying.
I feel like he went purposely in a dark direction. Like, you ended Clerks 2 on a positive note for everyone involved, basically.
Kinda, yeah.
Clerks 2 always, like, everyone's like, oh, it ended positively, but it always ended to me like bittersweet. It's like they kind of positive, but really it's kind of like, they're kind of stuck
I'll admit
back
it, but
where
they
they
were
are.
reasonably happy at the end,
Yeah.
right?
So, yeah, what I was
This-
going
Yeah, no, you're right. This takes it in just a much...
Yeah, it's
Like,
a different...
unnecessarily...
That's what I was
yeah.
gonna say. So you have the Randall storyline where he has that I'm dying, I'm wasting my life kind of thing,
Yeah.
and then he kind of goes up a bit. He gets energized and he's ready to do something.
Yeah.
But then, like, Dante's emotional troubles are ignored in the film, which causes him to have that tumultuous break.
Yeah.
And also,
like,
Randall's
'cause-
kind of constantly negging him the whole time.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, I mean, that's Randall's character.
Yeah,
Like, he's...
but so you have this beautiful scene of reconciliation, where Randall finally understands that they're like brothers. Basically, they've had the same life, more or less. So you get that wonderful scene in the hospital, and then Dante promptly dies.
Yeah.
And I was like, what on?
Yeah.
Why? How did he come to? And I get it, the meter joke, right? Oh, look, Dante dies in the end, because get it, we were going to do that in Clerks 1, but
Yeah.
do you get it? Wink, wink.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's such
that
a
pissed
dumb
me off.
idea.
I'm like-
Because I'm like, you have the man suffer, you have the reconciliation.
Yeah.
If they had those characters get back together, finish the movie, regardless of what happens at the end, and they're stronger for the experience, beautiful ending. I would have thought, like, okay, their arc handled perfectly. They understand each other better. They understand that they're in it together.
Yeah.
They get the emotional resolution that they need. But
Fade
instead,
out.
it's just way more sadness, because
Yeah.
then suddenly everybody's grieving at the
I
end.
think it's unnecessary as well, because like the first Clerks movie is like there's all these hints. His name's Dante because it's like Dante's Inferno. He's stuck in hell. This convenience store is hell for him. And Dante, he's not even supposed to be there. And he's going through all these terrible things keep happening to him. And he's talking about how life sucks, and then life's a bitch and you die. And then there's a black cat that keeps running across the convenience store. And it keeps pointing at something bad's going to happen. And Kevin Smith's original ending for the original Clerks was a robber comes in and holds up the quick stop convenience store and shoots Randall and he dies and it ends. And
Yeah.
everyone who saw the movie was like, you can't do that. It's the worst ending.
Yeah.
And they cut it out. And 30 years later, he's like, I feel like he tried to recycle that ending.
Yeah.
But now the character's much older and
also-
it's just kind of sad and pathetic.
Also,
And it's just like, dude.
Two heart attacks in the one
Yeah.
film. Come on,
Also,
man.
you used that
Like,
device for Randall
at
to
least-
survive
at
and to
least-
give him a new lease on life, which is what happened to Kevin Smith. And now you do that for the other
Yeah.
character and he just dies. And it's like, what?
Also,
At least
then
it
why-
would have been a bit better if somebody came in and shot Dante. You know what I mean? At least I'd
Yeah.
be like, okay, another reference.
Or
but
you know what they should have done is they should have done that, and then Dante should have opened his eyes and be like, "Oh, are we good?" And Randall's like, "Yeah, that's it, cut." And it's
Credits.
like- and everyone's like, "Hang on, you can't end your movie." And it's like more autobiographical. Again,
Yeah.
it's not original because everyone knows the story. All the Kevin Smith fans know the story.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and it's also like, oh, you get to do it, but also you don't get to do it.
Yeah.
I also don't like the fact that if they're going to do that to Dante, then why end up having the tease of like, why bring Veronica into it as a potential way for him to move
Yeah.
forward in a more positive
I feel
direction,
like-
right? They can overcome their struggles together. They have that kind of scene
A lot
where they
of-
hash out their problems in the
Yeah.
in the car. I'm like,
a lot of shows and movies that come out that are like sequels or rebootquels or spin-offs or whatever that we talk about, where I was like, oh, it's such a huge problem where it's just nostalgia bait. And I feel like
you could have had Veronica in it without trying to
I
lead it
feel
in
like
a certain direction. Which
this
they
movie
did.
has, because the whole movie is about making the original Clerks and having those characters back and doing the same things they're doing. The whole movie is just like revisiting things we've already seen.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not a movie in itself. And the original, quote unquote, original parts to the movie are the sad parts,
Yeah.
which I understand and are mostly done
Look, yeah,
relatively
they
well.
were effective to me.
Yeah,
I got
effective.
misty quite a few times.
But also they're not resolved in any way that's meaningful.
yeah.
It's not that they're unsatisfying, which they're not. They are unsatisfying.
They work.
But it's literally like, oh, really? That's it? After
Yeah.
all this time? Like, I know you want to put these characters to bed and quote unquote retire them, which you don't necessarily have to do. But it's like,
yeah, like you can have an ending without there being
Yeah.
deaths involved. It could just be okay.
like you've already made Dante the most miserable character in the world by killing off his wife the minute after the second movie ended, killing off his wife and unborn child the minute after the second movie ended, which I don't think was necessarily, even if Rosario Dawson wasn't available for as many scenes as you wanted her in, the amount of scenes she's in the movie anyway as a ghost, you could have just had her alive and just come and visit the store
Yeah.
or
That
on
could have
the
been-
phone.
That could have been divorced or something.
Yeah, or like you could do anything. And I feel like the thing he chose was deliberately
Giving Dante a reason to be even more miserable so that he'll be able to get drunk enough to have the heart attack to kill him.
Exactly. And also to kill him off so that Kevin Smith can finally put a nail,
Yeah.
an end to this. I'm like, all you need to do was,
Unless it was contractual where they're like, the only way we're going to make this film is if somebody dies so we
No.
don't have to make another one.
that would all, no,
Which I don't...
I don't
yeah.
no, I don't think that at all. I think I think it was the wrong decision. A lot of the decisions were wrong. And again, there's resource problems. They don't have the biggest budget in the world. But for what they did have, you could easily rewrite this to have, Randall has the heart attack, starts making the movie, and
I mean, the whole thing is it's easier to make a movie now than it is when he made it back in the day, right? It's like
that's the other problem with the movie.
it's like,
he's
yeah.
making a movie with the Kevin Smith mindset of like, this is still the early 90s, whereas it's like things are so different now.
with the right resources, it's like, yeah, he maybe didn't have. Obviously, I'm ignorant of everything that goes on in the movie making industry, especially in America, right? But he could have shot it with a phone. He could, in terms of like,
No, yeah,
he could have
not
had the
to say, I
characters.
just feel like the way the movie sets out, the fact that he's got characters reenacting scenes from the original movie, which only took place on over one day. So all the scenes in this movie are based on things that happen to them on one day in their lives. Which, for us, the audience, we know, but them in
canon,
in the canon, it's like, this makes no sense. You would never make a movie based on all your experiences at your work that only took place on one day.
Yeah, they'd have more stories.
Yeah, but obviously because we don't know those stories, or the audience can't point those out, we would be like, oh, that wasn't in the first movie, so it doesn't make sense. But it leads to a kind of stale, boring movie that goes nowhere.
And it would have been a good opportunity to have some sort of Clerks gags that we didn't get in the first movie.
Exactly. That's what all this movie needed to be, was a Clerks movie where weird customers come in and they have arguments and they have discussions, and all Randall needed to do was film it. And it's like, maybe even make a documentary.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting thing. Like a documentary, like a week in the life of the Clerks.
Yeah. Also, I know that in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, Jay finds out he has a daughter, and it's kind of about that thing, and Kevin Smith working out that stuff in his life, and Kevin Smith cast his own daughter as Jay's daughter in the movie.
Yeah.
And so it's like Kevin Smith working out fatherhood on screen through the movie. And I know he probably didn't want to do that again, but I mean, killing off Dante's unborn child, and like savage. It's just like not having like a 15-year-old kid who would be the perfect age to start working part-time at a quick stop.
As well as having Dante not resolved that grief very well, so he still holds on to pretty much all of the grief. So the scene where they want to recreate the Clerks II donkey scene, he basically has a breakdown and he leaves.
Yeah.
Not he has to run away into the dark.
Yeah.
So it's like, not only did he suffer the loss, but it's been like what, 14 years since
16
since the loss in canon.
14, 15, yeah.
And he still hasn't got over it so much that he can enter movies.
Yeah.
So I think that's like another layer of unnecessary sadness that he's adding into it.
Yeah, and
I feel like
the whole movie, it feels like, we talked about this on other movies when we talk about the sequels. We've talked about this before. I can't remember exactly when, but it's like the first movie ended, and then the second movie, and then 15 years later the second movie comes out, and it's like you hit pause at the end of the first movie and nothing happened to these characters for 15 years.
Yeah.
And then you pick up, and it's just like, most sequels come out 1-2 years later, so that's not a big problem. You pick up where the last movie left off, okay, fine. But when this amount of time goes past and these characters have aged so much and the world has changed so much and Kevin Smith has changed so much, to have them just pick up literally where Clerks II ended,
it's awkward. Yeah,
I feel like he didn't want to do the daughter working at the quick stop thing because he didn't want people criticizing him for doing it. It's something again because he did something similar in Yoga Hoses, right? Exactly,
and that's my That's one of my big problems with Yoga Hoses. Is Yoga Hoses could have been a perfectly young female Clerks the movie, but because Kevin Smith gets high as a kite, he just went off on weird tangents, and that movie goes in weird, and it has its moments and it's fun in its own right, but it's not a particularly good movie. And now all these years later, it's just like, well, now he can't do the things he maybe should do because he's already kind of and that's the thing. Like, filmmakers often they do the same. They have the same themes in their movie, similar characters. They reuse cast members, but they also reuse similar ideas over and over again.
Yeah.
Like a filmmaker will make different movies, not sequels, like different movies in their career, but you can tell, this is a
the guy who did Nobody. What's his name?
The director or the writer?
The writer, I mean.
Yeah,
there's
Derek Kolstad.
You can see there's similar themes to his movies. Yeah,
it's like. Yeah, it's like you can tell this is a Spielberg movie because it has daddy issues in it. And it's like all his movies are different over the years, but it's like, it has daddy issues, it's a Spielberg movie.
Yeah, and cheese.
So like, I understand that Kevin Smith is going to revisit a lot of these things, but like he didn't revisit it in the best way.
Yeah.
And the actual filmmaking and script itself, it felt very stale.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I enjoy the movie. I'll probably watch it again one day, but
Oh man, see,
I'm happy.
it was like watching Click twice. That's one for me, man.
Too sad.
You know,
Too
like
sad.
I don't do well with the death sadness scenes.
Yeah.
Like the scene when they're in the hospital room. I was like, nah. I almost started crying. I was like,
Yeah.
I can only do this once. I'm sorry, Kev. I can't. I don't know if I'm just getting sad and old, but also, like I said,
It's alright. Kev cries at every single
I
movie
know-
he can.
yeah,
Anyway.
he does.
Yeah.
I'm a grown man working.
That's the
I'm a grown
thing
man
is-
working retail. Stories about retail sadness don't sit well with me.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to watch my life on the screen.
But
I
that's why,
watch
like,
movies to escape. Thanks.
Clerks 1 and 2 were the perfect like catharsis for retail workers.
Because it wasn't sad necessarily. It was just like,
Yeah.
look, I
It
understand.
was frustrating, but it was
Yeah.
just like, oh yeah, we get it, and
Yeah.
and it was funny. And this movie, and also because it's about older men in their late 40s, it's kind of like, oh, this is just sad now, and he probably shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Or if he did it, like again, he should have gone in a different direction.
Yeah. Because I don't think those characters, I mean, you know, they're not real. Kev
Yeah.
can do what he wants with them. He owns them.
Yeah.
I don't think they deserved what they got. You know what I
No.
mean?
It doesn't, like, that's why I said, that's what I just said a few minutes ago. Not only is it unsatisfying, it's also like, it doesn't feel justified.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't feel earned. Especially after all this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like fans get attached to these characters. We like these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't
And
just...
it's not necessarily the ending that really any of his fans probably would have wanted for Dante.
Did you watch during the credits? Did you let the credits roll?
I
Because
skipped.
there's a commentary.
I heard the commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
another...
So
don't-
it's
I
like
skipped- I
it's
didn't-
the
I didn't-
second run. So you get like the first credits, and then this commentary starts during like,
It's like
the
in
second
the middle
run
of the credits, like there's music over the credits,
Yeah.
and then like halfway through the credits, the
Kevin
music
Smith starts
fades out, and
narrating.
Kevin Smith starts like talking over the credits, and he's like, "I wrote this in the script, and it was originally supposed to be a voiceover at the end of the movie, but we decided to cut it out." And he says something like, "It's like a voiceover." He, as himself, he
Yeah.
comes in as the narrator of this
Smod.
universe, yeah,
Instead
and
of
he
God.
says something like, "Randall, in his, for the rest of his life, Randall would work at the Quick Stop, but then make movies every chance he got. And every time he would do this, and then and over his career, he'd yada yada. And he died when he was 90 something years old, and looking back on his life, and it wasn't so bad at the end. And they decided to cut that out. And I'm like, even that feels unjustified.
Yeah.
Like, why not make a movie why not end the movie? You know what? This is cheesy as hell, and I've probably seen it in a bunch of other movies, but end the movie with the premiere of Clerks.
Yeah.
I said that to Nathan. So it's funny.
Yeah.
We
So
laugh.
it's
It couldn't.
come
It
full
couldn't
circle.
work. It couldn't work because they can't have Weinstein
No, no,
laughing
no.
in the back at the dirty
You know what I
jokes.
said? You know
Have
what I,
like a Robert De Niro and Cape Fear-esque and Harvey Weinstein.
I said to Nathan, what should have happened if he wanted to have this kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge ending? They should have made the movie, have it premiere, and it bombed. And then they have to go back to work at the Quick Stop.
That would have been sad, but at least it would have been like, okay, that's kind of funny. But I think like having it come full circle and literally closing off what has become a circle jerk
Yeah.
for Kevin Smith, but closing it off in universe and closing it
Yeah.
off for fans by literally ending the whole universe with like the opening scene of the original Clerks.
See, then we get trapped in a nasty
Yeah.
loop
You know-
where the Clerks 4 is Randall making Mallrats.
No, that's what I say.
He's
The
making a
ending-
documentary
there
about
should
his
be-
friend
no,
Brody.
What I would have loved would be an after credit scene where an executive's like, "We think this will be your most famous movie," and it's like a Mallrats script
Yeah.
because it bombed.
No,
but even then, that's just
yeah,
like a.
but see, this is just like, but that's what I'm saying is like, if
Yeah, I agree with you,
if
though.
you're going to make a Clerks 3 that one ties off the story of the Clerks,
Yeah.
and 2 says goodbye to all the View Askewniverse, and 3 is a meditation on a meta meditation on
his
your career
career,
and
yeah.
life. Have it end where it began. Have
Yeah.
Randall make the movie, it gets sold, it gets premiered, and people go, hey, this guy's pretty good. Maybe he doesn't have to work in a Quick Stop his whole life.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe Dante becomes a movie producer.
Yeah, he's Dante's like literally Scott Mosier
Randall-
in this scenario.
Exactly.
He's the producer.
Randall is Kevin Smith and Dante's
Scott
Scott
Mosier.
Mosier. Like, it writes itself.
Yeah, I know.
And I hate to do this to Big Kev because we all love him, but it's kind of like, it didn't feel justified.
There could be a joke in there as well about how Randall's movie was the most pirated movie of all time. Because back in the day, Clerks, no one bought it, but everyone pirated it.
Yeah. It's also like, times have changed so much since even Clerks 2 came out, that like making Jay and Silent Bob reboot and making Clerks 3 was kind of a mistake, because not only is Kevin Smith not the same, not only is the world not the same, not only are the fans not the same, but like the universe, the canon is just like so far removed from where it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
That's just like, do we really want to see these old characters? Do we really want to see old Jay and old Bob?
Give us something new, Kev.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I feel like we're in the perfect time for a Mallrats sequel, because everybody suddenly loves comic books and the comic book movies. I can understand he could get material for that and it would be relevant, because, everybody loves Marvel now.
But then it's the danger of the Kev retread.
Nobody loves Marvel more than Brody, which, and that they could, like, factor that in somehow.
Yeah.
But
also, like, I feel like if you are going to say goodbye to the View Askewniverse, you probably just need to do one big mega movie and do like a Jay and Silent Bob meets Clerks 3
Part 1.
Yeah. not necessarily that, but it's like, I feel like whatever happened to reboot was enough, and this is just like, okay, and this as well, and it's like, I don't know.
I feel you.
You know what I mean?
I feel you.
Like, I feel
there needed to be more.
Doing multiple sequels to end multiple movies that came out 20 almost 30 years ago, just feels kind of like...
You needed one reason to bring the characters together.
Yeah.
So even if, for example, let's just say if he decided Clerks 3 should be a limited series, for example, right? Then you might... or a 3-hour film, like, screw it. Who cares, right? We're in the era of streaming. He can make his movies as long as he wants.
Yeah.
You could have, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to make a movie with everybody the Clerks guys know. And then you could... Also, and it could be an original film. Like, they might be making an original movie, whatever. But then you can also bring in Brody. You can tie all the pieces together.
I'm going to completely speak out of term and just... This, like, probably has no bearing in reality. But I'm just going to put it out there because it just popped into my head. Kevin Smith started as an indie director with little resources, and... he's gone through ups and downs in his career, and he's basically come back to being an indie director. Like, basically, his movies now are lower budget. They're not big, wide releases. They're
like Hollywood indie, yeah.
Yeah. And I know he's still like, there's still a lot of money involved, and they still want to make a profit and stuff. But it's like, a lot of indie movies, they like, even Clerks, probably the original Clerks itself, like, they just film on weekends. Whenever a person is available, they get that person on. And it's like, what if he started making Clerks 3 and like Jay and Silent Bob reboot like simultaneously, and just kept filming whenever someone was available? Jason Lee's famous now. We can't get him on. We'll wait.
Yeah.
Like I said, this has no bearing in reality. This was never going to happen because there has to be a release date. They have to get. But
then again, like, he's also financing and making the movie. But he's also, again, he's partnering with Lionsgate or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's his own money. He can shoot it when he pleases.
Like,
right?
Like going back to your roots and like making something that's just like, whenever we can get the person in, we will do that.
Yeah.
Could have been something amazing.
Yeah,
and that's just me wishful thinking because I'm disappointed now.
I will say though, plus points for having Ben Affleck in the film.
Boston John.
Boston John.
Minus 10,000 points.
Yeah. I thought, what is it? Lion face. Lemon face. Ooh. Yeah. Awesome.
Nah. I don't like those scenes because it feels like, this is the meta scene. You know, like I hated Ben Affleck's scene in Reboot because of all the meta jokes that he was doing.
Yeah.
Even though when he was talking about his daughter or whatever, it's like, I like that aspect.
I like what that scene represents because it represents the reforging of the connection between Affleck and Kevin Smith. So it's like, I like the fact that they talk to each other now that Jennifer Garner's gone. What I will say is that you're a man who does not like My Chemical Romance. Now, how did you feel about
Thank you, Callum. I wanted to talk about
How did you feel about the opening scene?
Okay, so Callum and Nathan are the pasty white boys who listen to early 2000s emo music.
No, that's me. That's me. That's not him. That's me.
I like Mike, but I'm not that big on the whole
but
scene.
Callum does, I know.
Yeah.
You know me. I don't like that stuff. I tried listening to My Chemical Romance. I don't.
Me and James are big on the Prince.
Yeah, we all love Prince.
Some of the, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, how did you feel about the opening scene?
Yeah. But this is the best use of Black Parade I've ever heard.
I know.
I was jamming out. I was like, yes.
I was really surprised. He used there was quite a lot of My Chem in there. Not a lot. But I noticed, I looked it up because I could swear it was the song. And Nathan made a good point. He uses a instrumental version of the song Dead off the same album. Okay. But it's in the score. It's not like a soundtrack song. Because there's a section when they're filming, it's like a quick montage of them filming some stuff, whatever. And there's like piano stuff, and it's from the Black Parade.
One thing, like...
And anyway, and there's Gerard Way does that Oh Rowley song or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Because I know Kev's a huge fan of Gerard Way.
Yeah.
Because of course he is. Because he likes the music as well, but the comics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was... But yeah, the opening scene I thought was awesome.
Yeah. I feel like the opening scene, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And then it...
Had an energy to it. Yeah,
it didn't... That felt like classic Clerks, original Clerks, Clerks 2. It's like, oh, this is going to have the same energy, the same rhythm, but it didn't
last.
Yeah, it didn't last. I think, like, again, there's the resource problem, the money problem, but like I said, like the filmmaking isn't as good as it used to be. Even the Clerks 1, which is famous for its just put the camera down, let it roll, have the actors say their lines.
Yeah.
It's not exactly...
It's not Nolan.
Yeah, it's not,
It's not Kubrick.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's not it's not the greatest filmmaking ever, but it's effective. And this movie, it felt like very just stale, and like the editing was off, and there was like a constant score underneath every scene, which is a very bad indie movie thing to do. And it just felt kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I think he's gotten worse as a filmmaker. But again, like, this isn't even a movie. It's just Kevin working some stuff out on screen because he's gotten to this point in his career and he's like, oh, I got to say goodbye to these characters. And fans have been wanting it, but I don't think it panned out. I don't think it worked out.
I agree.
We'll be right back with more thoughts on Kev after this short break. You are back on the Tuesday Review talking Kevin Smith and Clerks 3. So we were just saying that the movie, it's not terrible. It has its moments.
Yeah, there are moments, like, as emotional and sad as it can get. Like, there are a lot of good jokes that land. For every joke that doesn't really land or meta reference that you kind of roll your eyes at, there are a couple of really good, funny moments.
Yeah.
I think Elias had some of the best moments in the movie.
Just like in Clerks 2, yeah.
Yeah. I think, like, the fact that he's just constantly changing costume, like every scene was hilarious.
Yeah, he forsakes Jesus to praise the Dark Lord. So he comes to the conclusion that Jesus has never really been there for him, since in his one time of desperate need, Jesus does not intervene.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, I guess it's up to Satan.
Yeah.
It's like that on, there's no in between ground. Yeah. It's either Jesus or Satan. That's it.
Like, well, I'm a Satanist now.
And then it turns out that Randall's going to be Dante. Sorry, was it?
Yeah. Wait, who?
Who's in the hospital scene when it's
at the start. It's Randall.
Yeah.
He prays to Jesus. He's like, please save Randall.
And then Dante's like, calm down.
Yeah, and then he's just like, oh, you've forsaken me. He's like, from now on, I will worship Satan if Randall is saved. And then Randall gets better, and so he becomes a Satanist.
Yeah, and he like takes his clothes off in the hospital. Yeah. It's hilarious.
And like every scene, he's like got like a weird white makeup with like all this stuff on his face.
And there's that recurring joke which I laughed at because I'm 15. There's that we are butt thieves, and everyone's like, what?
Yeah, what's a butt thief? Yeah, there's some really good jokes in it. So it's not a complete loss. That's why I didn't completely write it off. As much as I hated the ending and as disappointing as it was, I was kind of like, okay, there are moments that I enjoy.
Yeah, of course.
It's just, it's going to be hard to, like, when if I rewatch all the movies in the future, it's like, I know this is where it ends. I'm going to be disappointed.
Well, I'll skip, if I do a rewatch, I'll skip Clerks 3 because, like, I don't need the heartstrings to be I'm done.
Or turn it off after like
after
Randall
halfway.
makes-
Yeah. Once Dante gets drunk, the movie goes off.
Yeah. But even that
'Cause
scene was
I wanted joy, and I didn't find it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
yeah.
And that's a personal thing. That's got nothing to do with Kev. Kev obviously wanted a more melancholy film.
But that's like again, like the emotional scenes are fine, but it didn't feel justified. It didn't feel like it paid off. It didn't feel like it was necessary to do this.
Yeah.
You know, even if personally that's the way he felt, it's just like, did you really have to do that?
He was fun. Like I said, there were funny moments. It was a funny film.
There are some good moments.
I did have a chuckle when they were like, "Oh, we should talk about the Death Star," and they were like, "Oh, I don't want to get sued by Disney."
Yeah.
So that was also Bob Iger's back to the CEO, friend of the show. Bob Iger's back to CEO. That's,
Yes.
so that's an interesting note.
Because we know he listens to the show.
That's it. He does. Kevin's career does not stop with Clerks 3 though. He has his energy is still going.
Yeah, but
this is also the man famously has like 100 scripts.
What's interesting is ever since when Clerks 2, after Clerks 2, and he didn't do View Askew movies anymore, and for years we were like, oh, is he going to go back to View Askew? Is he going to do a Clerks sequel? Is he going to do a Mallrats sequel? It's like you kind of want him to go back to it. Now that he's gone back to it, I'm like, no, enough. Please don't go back to View Askew anymore. I want new movies. Do something new. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You've already done your contemplative meta commentary on your life and career and
It's
the
time
View
for
Askew
something fresh.
View Askew universe. Yeah, do something new. But yeah, like Nathan said, he's always got 1,000 scripts and ideas that he's like, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna make that. I'm gonna make Moose Jaws.
I'm down for Moose Jaws as a concept.
And it never comes out.
The interesting thing is that all of those projects, they were made before they were in development.
Heart attack. Yeah.
Before his renaissance, if you will.
Yeah.
So he's got, so much to everybody's surprise, once he got financing for Reboot, it actually did really well. Like the Blu-ray sales were really profitable for everyone involved. So he has support behind him now. Like Nathan was saying, he's partnered with Lionsgate. Is it Saban Films? What's that other?
Yeah,
the other
Saban,
the other production company who he's quite tight with, because they know that he does actually know what he's doing.
And he hustles his movie on his roadshow too.
Yeah. So I do think this movie he's talking about, he was writing a new screenplay. That will probably be his next film because he seems to really want to make it.
It's worth noting that like before his heart attack, he was kind of like, I'm kind of over movies.
Yeah.
Like I don't really, I think I could stop making them. Like I don't really care anymore. And his last movies weren't that great, and his last couple of movies weren't that great and didn't do too well. And he's kind of like, whatever. And then he had the heart attack, and he's like, okay, I'm back. Like I got to do something. I got to keep. Like I'm lucky. I got to keep making movies. I got to keep doing. And so yeah, like I'm hoping that his new original non-View Askew movies.
Once he's worked out the issues, once he, as you said, he's got these things out of him.
I'm just worried that because of budget and stuff, like, are we going to see the same problems with like the cinematography and the editing that have happened?
Probably.
I think he just needs to partner with talented people like he did on his earlier movies. But also, like, even his early movies, like, he edited them all, and they were all well edited. But now he seems to be too much smoke. Yeah. Noich. Smoking. Who smokes the blunts? Kev smokes the blunts.
And, he's living the life he wants to live. So, good for him. But I do personally think it probably takes a toll on his work. Because he does smoke a lot.
It's part of his process. Like, he gets up, he wakes and bakes, and then he writes.
Yeah, no, legit. And like, I think if you can watch him do it too. Like, if you subscribe to his service, you can like watch him at his desk and stuff. Yeah. But I'm like, his best work was done when he was also relatively sober, man. Yeah. And that's like some of the, I'm not one of those guys who says that you need to be smoking drugs to make good art, or you have to only make good art if you're sober, whatever. Yeah. Everyone has their own way of doing
whatever works, yeah.
But not everybody works. Like, you might want to work a certain way, but you might get your best work if you don't smoke. You know what I mean? So everyone's different.
Kevin Smith has also become his own brand. Like, he's no longer just that director guy. Like, he's like his own. He's a multi-hyphenate, I guess. Yeah. And so, like, it'll be interesting to see whatever movie he does next. Like, if it can
If
exist on its own.
Yeah.
Like, can you just watch it not knowing who Kevin Smith is, not knowing any Easter eggs
That's
or references?
why I'm excited.
If it ends up being Twilight of the Mallrats, we're going to get more of the same.
Yeah.
And I hope that, like I said, I hope that doesn't come out.
That's why I'm excited, because I want to see what he can do with original characters, with an original story. Because I think that's where he might actually get his groove back, because he'll be free from the shackles of the View Askewniverse.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to write this because Jay would say this.
You can't have meta references in an entirely new world that you don't like. Because the View Askewniverse has so much baggage in it.
He did Kilroy Was Here. Did anyone see Kilroy Was Here?
What's that?
Another thing he did. But he released it as an NFT.
What the hell? It wasn't a movie, though.
I'm pretty sure it was. I mean,
wait, what?
Anyway, continue your thought.
I think that's another problem with the View Askewniverse, is by the time you get to Clerks 2, it's the whole universe is interconnected. So it's like Marvel. It was Marvel before Marvel, where all the characters know each other and the same actors playing the different characters and whatever. And it's like self-referential. On top of that, you've got Kevin Smith's pop culture references themselves, and it starts to overwhelm the movies. And then I think Reboot and this movie, plus you've got the added baggage that we talked about with him aging and the meta commentary of his life and career, but then plus you've got the interconnected View Askewniverse. And the pop culture, all the pop culture of it, it becomes so incestuous and bloated. Yeah, bloated.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that if he does do an original movie,
it might be leaner. It might be.
I'm sure he'll have lots of pop culture references because that's just how he speaks and how he writes. Like Tarantino-esque. Tarantino does it as well. Like it's kind of like it's in that dialogue. But yeah, I'm hoping he can get out of that. Bloated, feel less bloated. And
Kilroy Was Here was released in 2022. A comedy horror anthology movie directed by Kevin Smith and written by Kevin Smith and Andrew McElfresh. But
can you see it anywhere, or you have to buy it?
Well, it was released as an NFT.
So that means there's only one?
There was 5,555 exclusive tokens that grant you ownership of the movie released.
So dumb.
But I don't know if anyone's seen it. Let us know if it's any good.
Yeah, that's also a subplot to the movie, the whole NFT thing.
The crypto,
And it's like, it becomes like a Deus Ex Machina at the end where it's like, oh, we need exactly 30 grand. And it's like, oh, how much money do you have on you? 30 grand because I sold my NFT. And it's like, oh, okay.
Lame.
It felt kind of lazy and...
Yeah.
I feel like I said, like there's different
ways
he could have gone.
They could have just been like, oh, well, Jacob, like we have that money. We got royalties from the Blood Man.
Yeah, I thought Jay and Bob were canonically rich now.
They are.
And they gave him, in Clerks 2, they gave them the money to buy the Quick Stop and the video store. And then in this movie, which I actually think is a really good idea, in this movie, the video store no longer exists because people don't rent videos. And they've turned it into a weed store, which is genius. Like, if they should have done more about the weed store.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Like Randall being like,
Jay having to deal with customers?
Yeah.
What more do you want?
Which they kind of do at the front. That's a funny scene where they do it at the front of the store like it's the 90s.
Yeah.
Silent
That's
Bob,
how we did in the 90s, son.
Silent Bob having to clean up spills or something. Yeah. Like, come on, hilarious.
Yeah.
The physical comedy.
Yeah.
But they don't really use it.
No. Yeah, there's like a lot of missed opportunities. Yeah. But Callum was saying that... the new movie, apparently, that he's
something to do with like skipping school to go watch movies like people did when he was young or something like that. I can't remember specifically. If
that's the case, that feels like a movie young Kevin Smith would make.
Yeah.
Let's make... I'm a young filmmaker. I want to make a cheap movie, a low budget movie. What can I make it about? I love movies.
The fact that he also just bought a cinema helps.
Yeah. Let's make a movie about a kid who skips school to see movies like I used to do. That feels like something that's worth him putting on screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We'll see. Like, the future is still bright for Kev, especially now that he's free from the shackles. So,
well, yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean,
who knows? It could go any direction.
Who knows? Like we said, he always has a lot of ideas, and not all of them get made. Lots of filmmakers do.
His Batman followers know that painfully well.
Yeah, like Guillermo del Toro has 1,000 projects going at any one time, and only one comes out every once in a while. Like, he never gets to make them all, and it's the same here. It's like we can get excited about all these things that he's talking about, but whether they come out or not.
I will say though, it is nice that it's all wrapped up. So you know what I mean? It's like now that whether I like the ending or not, not every filmmaker who is as epic in scope as Kev can say that they've concluded most of the View Askewniverse, Brody's story notwithstanding or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, like, do we really need to see these characters so much long? Like 20 years later,
it'd be a nice Blu-ray box set though, wouldn't it?
But not if they end like Clerks 3 ends, you know? Like, not if this is going to be the way.
I think leave it alone now.
Yeah, I think
he's done. I think he's definitely done with it.
I hope so.
Honestly, at this point, I hope he doesn't make Mallrats because I don't want Brody to get sad.
Yeah. No, I don't think it would be a good idea. Especially because mole culture doesn't really exist anymore. And
not in the same way.
I feel like kind of with Clerks 3, it's like he would be doing it through a 50-year-old guy's lens of like, hey, this is how you do it, and this is how we did it, but also this is not how it exists anymore. And it's like, I don't know.
It'd have to be something comic book related. Maybe that's the only way they could do it. It couldn't be in a comic book store.
Yeah,
it'd have to be about the MCU, something related to that.
Some
Comic-Con,
like we just talked about, it will get bogged down in its own references and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, they would have, like, cameos from Chris Evans. And I'll be like, oh, okay. You know, like...
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it feels... Yeah, I hope anything he does now is just, like, an original movie that he had an idea for. Like, I still want to see... Even though, as a filmmaker, he might not be great anymore, like, I still want to see what he has.
Yeah, of course.
Because
we're still on the Kev
He's
train.
a good storyteller. Like, he loves the sound of his own voice. Self-admittedly, he said he loves the sound of it. That's why he has 1,000 podcasts, and he does 1,000 live shows and 1,000 this and 1,000 that. It's because like he's
very charismatic though. He knows, like you said, he knows how to tell a story.
And he's been in the industry for a long time, so he has a lot of stories, a lot of celebrity encounters, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure he could do any number of things. I think we talked about this one time where I think his style now is suited more for TV. Like kind of 20-minute episodes of like sitcom-y, like funny character does this. Like I feel like
I'll always remember his episode of was it The Flash or something where you see Jason Mewes is like, that was my mom's car. And I was like, that was like classic Kev. But that's my point. It's like some of his best work is in TV.
Yeah, he did that. He had that pilot a few years ago. No, yeah, it was Reaper, but he had a pilot for a show he was writing and directing and starring in, Hollyweed.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was pretty good.
I never saw it.
I thought it was pretty good. I feel like if it got picked up and he made more episodes, like that would have been a good show. Like I feel like he could do, like that plays more to his strengths of like.
Streaming's in a weird place right now.
Yeah.
And we talked about, I remember years ago, we're like, why doesn't Netflix partner with, and it's just so weird.
It's in a weird place right now. But Kev's a perfect guy because he's it doesn't have to be high budget.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know.
I think that's all the time we got.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
It was a reasonably good film. Didn't go in the places we wanted to go. We necessarily wanted it to go in.
It
had some cool moments.
Yeah, after all these years of like...
ultimately unfulfilling.
Yeah, and being big Kevin Smith fans and never really talking about him properly on the show. Like, we talked about him here and there, but like finally we get to do a big review. And
come on the show, Kev. We'll talk about you some more.
Oh, yeah,
no.
Please.
We love you.
Oh, yeah.
We just absolutely adore the man.
He would probably do it if he was in Melbourne.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean we can't, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Please like and share this user over your Facebook page. You can catch the
Snooch
podcast.
to the nooch.
Snooch to the nooch. You can catch all our other episodes on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. We'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.
Snoogans.